What's up, guys? It's Jerry Wilson, also known as the Dockman, and today I'm going to show you a few things to look out for when purchasing a used dock. We're going to look at a couple different types of dock today. We're going to look at wood, aluminum, some sunwalk or polyethylene type decking, and then some floating dock. Now, one of the biggest things that I see when somebody purchases a used dock is they haven't surveyed their water depths and their bottom conditions before they go out into the market and start looking for a dock. So, number one, get out, figure out how deep your water is, how soft the bottom is, and that's going to help you understand what you need for lengths of poles, augers, or bottom plates. After that, the most cost-effective option, which I would steer you away from, is going to be wood. This is one of those that I see time and time again. I get a customer that calls me out and wants me to install something that I don't even feel safe installing because they really didn't look at the decking to make sure it's structurally sound and not a hazard. So when it comes to wood, specifically cedar or treated pine, you're going to want to look for a few things. The first one is going to be splintering or cracking of the wood. It's pretty apparent when it's splitting open and you can see big gouges in it and its lifetime is starting to expire. By the by, most people are getting rid of their wood dock when it is about to expire to upgrade to something maintenance-free like a sunwalk or anodized aluminum, so just beware of that. If the wood doesn't look like it's splitting and it's starting to dry out, the next thing that I start to look for is if it's actually still bolted to the framework. For instance, this section that's right beneath me here, I noticed as I was moving it over, the wood's not even bolted into the frame anymore. This makes it to where the whole thing tweaks back and forth. It's not stable, it's not sound, and it's not something you want. This dock section over next to me, I would say is still not great, but one step better. You notice that everything's solid, everything's bolted in place like it should be, and it hasn't discolored like the dock to the left of me. So this is a little bit lighter. You can tell it still has some life in it, and you'd get a few years out of this. Again, I really would never steer you to go the wood route, but if you just needed something for a couple years to get by, this is about as low as I would go as far as deteriorating wood. When you compare it to this one next to me, you can see how this is darkened. There's moss growing on it. Like I showed you, the boards are starting to disconnect, and all the framework is starting to get sloppy. After you decide whether or not you want to go with a wood section, the next thing to look at is going to be your leg frames. You're going to have a couple different ways of actually supporting the dock. The two most common ways that you're going to see in the used market, though, is going to be a crossarm with stringer brackets and crossarm clamps, or a welded crossarm like down beneath me here. Now, I would do everything I could to stay away from doing the conventional crossarm clamp, where an aluminum clamp actually squeezes around the pole and you tighten it down to adjust your height. What happens is this casted aluminum starts to strip out the head, the square neck of the carriage strips out the square hole that's in here and spins around. In most cases, when you see somebody selling something like this, these are going to be non-adjustable. They've worn them out, and you're not going to be able to level your dock up. So, when possible, I would stay away from your conventional crossarm clamp. If you can find something like this welded crossarm, which does exist, you're going to see a lot more of the casted crossarm clamps and stringer brackets out there. But if you can find something like this welded crossarm, this would be the way that I would go. This is used from a trade-in dock, and this thing's been adjusted for years, and all it is a 3/8 bolt right here that you loosen up with a 9/16 ratchet, move the crossarm to your desired height, tighten it down. If at all possible, go the welded crossarm route. Stay away from the casted crossarm clamps. That's about all the critical information when purchasing wood dock. Again, I sound like a broken record. I would stay away from it if you can. I cannot tell you how many times I have had people buy a pile of wood dock, bring me out to install it, we can't do anything with it, and they end up purchasing new, and they're out the money that they wasted on the used dock in the first place. Next dock we're going to talk about is going to be floating options. You're not going to see a whole heck of a lot of floating dock on the used market, but when you do, there's a couple things I need to caution you about. Let's go over to my dock graveyard. So here in the dock graveyard, we're going to start talking about floating dock and a couple things that you need to be aware of. So this right below me here is an easy dock section that we took in on trade. The most important thing when it comes to any floating dock is, you guessed it, that it floats. This one here had been hit in the corner, or a muskrat may have chewed it, I'm not sure, but this is something you need to look for. It looks like the customer, the owner of the dock had caulked it and tried to tape it. This section was full of water, hundreds of pounds. So you really want to actually lift the section up, feel if there's any water sloshing around, and make sure that it does indeed float. Look for any holes and look for any repairs, because 99% of the time, if there was a repair done to a floating dock, it's not going to be what you want. So this one here is a pretty cool specimen. I believe this actually came from a YMCA camp or a Christian camp. I'm sure it served its purpose. I don't know if this was actually manufactured dock or this was somebody's brainchild, but essentially what it looks like is like catwalks for pieces of scaffolding, and then somebody stuck some like Owens Corning foam in here. I see a lot of homemade rigged together floating dock because new floating dock is very expensive. And one thing that I noticed with these foam setups is they only last in the water for so long. So this here, it might be kind of hard to see through the lens of the camera, but you can see the UV rays are starting to deteriorate this foam. And I can tell you it was an absolute mess and an environmental hazard at this YMCA camp. This gets to a certain point where it gets so porous that it's really not floating the dock. It just sucks the water in like a sponge, and it really doesn't float and serve its purpose. Not to mention these things were about 900 pounds to get out of the water. I'm cautioning you because when this is sitting on shore and it's dry, there's really no way to tell that this is not a good choice. Floating docks with chunks of foam underneath it like this, I would definitely stay away from. Any type of homemade floating dock, I would say, is a no-go. Now we're going to look at a couple other dock surfaces, sunwalk or a polyethylene type decking and anodized aluminum. What I'm referencing here are new sections because we don't have anything used. We rarely take anything like this on trade or ever even buy it from a customer that wants to sell it because it's a one and done type scenario and people hold on to it. If you see something like this on the market and it's a reasonable price, I would say make sure that the hardware, the poles, everything fits your situation where you're going to be installing it. And if it does, go ahead and pull the trigger on it. Now, if you don't find something like this, I would strongly urge you as the viewer, as I do for my customers on a daily basis, to really think long and hard about buying new. You're going to get what you want the first time, a 10-year warranty, and if you're working with a company that's worth its weight, it's going to back you up with parts and pieces and anything you need for the whole run. I hope this video helped when you're out looking for a used dock. We'll see you on the next one.